Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, proud to support the mission of KPBS and privileged to serve San Diego clients. Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, helping homeowners maintain drain, heating, and cooling systems since 1978. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marcos Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
Good evening. It's Wednesday, May 19th. Thank you for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. It's a nearly $300 million boost to our local economy that sailed away with the pandemic. But today, a positive sign that the cruise industry is on its way back. KPBS reporter Melissa May was dockside as ship employees and the economy got a much-needed shot in the arm.
I would like to start all the vaccinations.
Captain Hank Draper of the Holland America line is eager to
get back in doing what we do best, which is giving our guests a memorable cruise vacation.
For all of 2020, cruise ships were either docked like this one or stuck out at sea without any guests. 137 cruise ships that were scheduled to stop in San Diego were canceled. In an effort to jumpstart the cruise season as early as October of this year, the Port of San Diego and Sharp Healthcare have partnered to vaccinate crew members on this ship and 2 ships off the coast.
Over 400 crew members got their first dose of the COVID-19 vaccine.
This is a major step to opening up this industry, and it's an incredibly important industry for the Port of San Diego and the San Diego region.
San Diego is the 3rd busiest cruise port in California. Port Commissioner Rafael Castellanos knows that this industry
creates thousands of good jobs in the restaurant, lodging, transportation industries, longshore workers, working waterfront workers.
Executing a vaccination event like this one was a team effort.
In close coordination with our local, state, and federal partners, since the beginning of the pandemic, we've obviously had to coordinate very closely.
Brett McLean, the executive vice president and COO of Sharp Healthcare, described their pandemic efforts so far.
As of this morning, we have vaccinated approximately 542,000 San Diegans. We are transitioning and pivoting from the work that we're doing in our vaccination sites to partnering with community industry as well as agencies to be able to bring vaccinations to the places that people work.
Sharp Healthcare personnel also headed out on boats to vaccinate the crew of a Princess ship today. Tomorrow they will sail out to one more Holland America ship to vaccinate that crew. Melissa May, KPBS News.
A reminder, if you want to set up a vaccination appointment for yourself or for an eligible family member, you can find a location close to you by going to our website, kpbs.org, and just clicking on the vaccines link on our homepage. Dust off your passport. The EU is taking a major step today to make European summer getaways a real possibility this summer. But as Camila Bernal explains, this option is likely only available to vaccinated travelers.
You sound like my kitty. Oh, my kitty would be so mad if I brought you home.
We apologize for that. We'll try and get back to that story a little later on. Activists calling for San Diego Mayor Todd Gloria to cut the city's police budget and invest more in social services were disappointed this week. KPBS Metro reporter Andrew Bowen explains why.
The San Diego Police Department saw no big changes in Gloria's final budget proposal released yesterday. Last month, Gloria proposed $19 million in additional police funding, mostly to cover rising pension costs. Kiara Pina of the progressive think tank Center on Policy Initiatives says while Gloria has called for more oversight and reforms to police policies, that isn't enough.
None of those are reflected in the proposed budget. So I think to community members who have been advocating for this for a really long time, not seeing that funding behind that is disappointing.
Gloria says he wants other types of first responders to help with homelessness and mental health crises, not police. But Darwin Fishman of the Racial Justice Coalition of San Diego says Gloria hasn't yet backed up that rhetoric with action.
My biggest concern about Mayor Gloria is actually the issue about courage. I mean, quite often he'd say the right things at the right time, but it's a real issue about believability.
Gloria has proposed a $4 million cut to police overtime spending, with some of those savings invested in a new police oversight commission and youth gang prevention programs. The City Council will discuss the latest spending plan on Thursday. The final deadline to approve the budget is June 15th. Andrew Bowen, KPBS News.
The Biden administration is taking steps to ease more than a year of asylum restrictions. Pandemic-related powers have led border authorities to rapidly expel single adults and many migrant families with older children. Now the administration has agreed to let in about 250 people a day through border crossings to seek refuge in the United States. It's also agreed to stop flying families across the border to be expelled. An attorney for the American Civil Liberties Union says the changes are the result of negotiations to settle a lawsuit. Home prices in California continue to soar, and competition for a limited supply of single-family homes is the new normal. KPBS reporter Jacob Ayer looked into the reasons for the sky-high prices and what it means for the housing affordability in San Diego County.
The median price of an existing single-family detached home in San Diego County rose to $825,120 in April, an increase from $800,000 a month ago and over $150,000 more than the same time last year, according to the California Association of Realtors. Those numbers mirror a statewide trend in increasing housing prices. San Diego real estate broker Voltaire Lepe says that this kind of market growth is unprecedented in the region.
There's very little inventory, right? So there's about 2,300 homes for sale. Last year, same time, there was over 5,000. In a normal market, there's between 6,000 to 8,000 homes for sale. And that just causes multiple buyers per property.
For some, the swelling market has made their dreams of buying a home unaffordable, particularly for first-time home buyers.
My fiance and I, we were looking at buying a single-family home, but it is way too competitive. So we actually we talked to our lender, and then we looked at options for multi-family homes. So I think we're going to go that route.
But for those who can afford the sky-high prices, Lepe says the supply is in such short demand that foregoing appraisal contingencies and bidding wars have become commonplace. That means homes in San Diego have recently been selling for well above the asking price, especially in North County.
North County, it starts at 50,000 and it goes up to 150,000. So, North County, it's very competitive, and the difference between what it's worth and what people are paying for is higher.
In April, California home sales increased for the third consecutive month and have risen over 65% from a year ago, while the median number of days it took to sell a California single-family home hit a record low of just 7 days. Lepe says he expected home prices in the region to continue to increase throughout the rest of 2021, as long as the federal government keeps interest rates low. Jacob Ayer, KPBS News.
And we want to get back to that story about travel opening up in Europe. Here's Camila Bernal.
The European Union finally opening its borders after almost a year of closures.
There will not be a full recovery of the economy without recovery of travel.
And there's still a lot of work to be done after difficult months for those in the business in the U.S. and abroad.
For the travel industry, the pandemic remains akin to a Category 5 hurricane.
But there is light at the end of the tunnel. The EU agreeing to allow entry to vaccinated travelers from countries with low infection rates. And while exact rules by EU member states are being decided, officials are optimistic that they'll go into effect in June, just in time for a summer vacation.
Obviously, the pent-up demand is real. Right now, travel is being driven by policy. You take something away from human beings that they took for granted, and it's going to turbocharge.
A formal adaptation of the EU recommendations is expected on Thursday, but many also asking officials in the U.S. for less restrictions.
The State Department and CDC have painted most international destinations with red warning tape. Even though the CDC issued new guidance that masking is not needed for the fully vaccinated,
Camila Bernal, KPBS News.
Community colleges faced a grim year as enrollment plummeted across the state. But KPBS education reporter Joe Hong says local college officials are optimistic about post-pandemic recovery.
In San Diego, many community college students decided to put their education on pause during the pandemic. At San Diego City College, enrollment dropped by nearly 15% between the fall 2019 and fall 2020 semesters. Carlos Cortez is the president of the College of Continuing Education at the San Diego Community College District.
The district itself is about 8% under-enrolled right now from our target. That's a direct consequence, we believe, of the pandemic. We have moved all of our programming online, and the online environment is not ideal for some students and for certain programs.
But the pandemic did have some positive outcomes for San Diego community colleges. Cortez says enrollment for vocational training programs like welding actually increased.
We have over 75 free job training certificate programs. Yesterday we ran our enrollment and we are 17% over our target. So we are popping at the seams in terms of enrollment.
Cortez says this trend makes sense. Job training programs are exactly what the country's labor force needs right now for the economy to recover. At Southwestern College in Chula Vista, the enrollment drop was primarily due to economic factors. That's according to college president Mark Sanchez.
Many of our community members have either lost their jobs or have had their hours cut, businesses have been shut down or severely reduced. So for them, their priority is employment rather than trying to go back to school at this point.
Both Sanchez and Cortez say enrollment dropped disproportionately for students of color. At San Diego City College, while the number of students in job training programs increased, the number of Black and Latino students in those programs went down. Joe Hong, KPBS News.
Both Southwestern College and the San Diego Community College District will require all students and staff returning in the fall to be fully vaccinated as soon as the FDA approves the vaccines. CDC numbers show new COVID-19 case rates are down across the U.S., causing cautious optimism among top health officials. But they say the key is to keep us going in the right direction may fall on young Americans. Mandy Gaither has a look at where we stand in our fight against the coronavirus.
In the war against COVID-19, some good news.
For the first time since the pandemic began, COVID cases are down in all 50 states.
Top U.S. health officials say vaccines have led to a dramatic decline in cases, hospitalizations, and deaths. That progress putting us on a path out of this pandemic.
We should all have cautious optimism. Cases have continued to decrease and have not been this low since spring of last year.
But the key to keep us going in the right direction may lie with young Americans.
We are winning the war on the virus, and we need you to help us finish the job. My message to young people, of course, is simple. Get vaccinated.
More than a week ago, the FDA gave emergency use authorization for the Pfizer vaccine in those as young as 12. Since then, the CDC says more than 600,000 12 to 15-year-olds have had at least one dose of the vaccine, but the numbers show vaccination rates in general were lower in rural areas.
This was true for counties across the country, across all age groups, and among men and women.
Officials say they're continuing to work to narrow the differences and make sure vaccine coverage is equitable regardless of where you live.
If you haven't yet been vaccinated, perhaps you will consider being our reason to celebrate one more.
For Health Minute, I'm Mandy Gaither.
Despite calls from the United States to wind down the military operation in the Gaza Strip, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has vowed to press ahead. Netanyahu's comments mark the first public rift between the two close allies and could complicate international efforts to reach a ceasefire. Hundreds have died since the fighting began last week. Israel continued to pound targets in Gaza with airstrikes today, while Palestinian militants bombarded Israel with rocket fire. Some breaking news. After months of a stalemate, the House just voted to create an independent 9/11-style commission. Its mission will be to investigate the ins and the outs of the violence on the U.S. Capitol that happened on January 6th. 35 House Republicans joined Democrats and voted to create a bipartisan commission. But as Isabel Rosales reports, senior Republicans are making clear they have little interest in a sweeping investigation.
A key vote in the House to investigate the deadly attack on the U.S. Capitol.
We have to protect our democracy.
If the bill passes, the 9/11-style bipartisan commission would take 6 months in its probe and could focus on former President Donald Trump, on his actions before, during, and after rioters stormed the Capitol.
I think he's obviously a very key individual.
Representative Liz Cheney, recently ousted from Republican leadership, expects House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy to be subpoenaed. The #1 Republican in the House reportedly had a fiery exchange with President Trump as the violence heated up.
He very clearly and said publicly that he's got information about the president's state of mind that day.
McCarthy, meanwhile, rejects the deal.
What America really wants to start talking about is getting our country back to work, back to school, back to health.
The top Republican in the Senate, Mitch McConnell, agrees, insisting the scope of the investigation is politically limited.
I've made the decision to oppose the House Democrats' slanted and unbalanced proposal.
Democrats hitting back.
What the Republicans are doing, the House Republicans, is beyond crazy.
The bill needs no Republican support in the House, but does need 10 Republican senators to survive a filibuster in the 50-50 split chamber.
The American people will see for themselves whether our Republican friends stand on the side of truth or on the side of Donald Trump's big lie.
In Washington, Isabel Rosales, KPBS News.
San Diego County supervisors are creating an Office of Climate and Environmental Justice. The panel voted unanimously to create an office that will help ensure environmental justice as part of the county's planning process. District 1 Supervisor Nora Vargas says the county needs to be responsive to all of its residents.
In my own district, the communities of Barrio Logan and National City rank in the top 5% for diesel air pollution in the state, and children's asthma hospitalization rates are 3 times more than the county average. We're proud of being a border community. However, as a result, in San Isidro, residents are exposed to pollution from vehicles that wait for hours at the ports of entry.
The office will focus on helping the county reduce air pollution and reduce the exposure to toxic chemicals, particularly in communities of color. Energy regulators say California is better prepared to avoid last summer's rolling blackouts, but the power grid is still vulnerable to extreme heat waves. State officials say they have acquired an additional 3,500 megawatts of capacity this year. 1 megawatt is enough power to power hundreds of homes. However, that does not guarantee we will avoid the blackouts, with the risk of heat waves increasing demand for power beyond what the grid can handle.
Our next system is beginning to push on in, and along with it, it is bringing some strong and gusty winds that will likely last through Friday evening. A dramatic cool down is on the way, especially for some of the desert locations and up into the higher terrain, where temperatures are going to be cooling off anywhere from 10 to 15 degrees from yesterday to, say, Thursday and Friday. So here are those wind advisories that remain in effect, again, mainly in the higher terrain up into the mountains, where winds likely will gust up to 45 miles per hour, but we could be seeing isolated wind gusts of up to 55 miles per hour, again, mainly up into the higher terrain. For tonight, temperatures are going to drop off into the low 60s. The clouds will be increasing. Do expect some thick morning fog out there, but temperature-wise, not too bad. Near the coast, we're going to be in the low 60s out there. Escondido getting down to 57 degrees for your overnight low. Borrego Springs, 61 degrees. And here's that cold front coming southward for your Thursday. Bring that cool push of air down into southern portions of California. Again, you'll likely feel it on Thursday and in some spots as we head into Friday, that biggest cool down. So we're down to 70 degrees in Escondido for your high tomorrow. Borrego Springs back into the 80s for highs, and that's not your coolest air just yet. It's going to get even cooler from those mid to upper 90s that you are used to. Friday, it remains unsettled here for much of Nevada up into northern portions of California. For us down here, though, we're likely just going to be talking about those gusty winds. So not too many changes near the coast. Temperatures generally staying in the upper 60s and low 70s. Do expect some thick morning fog out there over the next couple of days, though. Further inland, temperatures dropping off into the upper 60s by Saturday, but we rebound quickly back into the 80s by Monday. In the mountains, we're down into the 40s for highs on Friday and Saturday. Temperatures quickly rebounding, though, through the weekend. And in the desert, our coolest day looks like Friday. After that, we warm up back into the upper 80s by the end of the weekend. For KPBS News, I'm meteorologist Jessica Pash.
Before the COVID-19 pandemic, we told you about a new policy at the San Diego Humane Society. The nonprofit is releasing cats back to the streets instead of keeping them to be adopted or euthanized. Now, KPBS investigative reporter Claire Tregeser says that practice is ramping up despite a lawsuit from animal rights activists.
There could be as many as 500,000 stray cats on county streets, according to the San Diego Humane Society. To deal with all these free-roaming felines, the nonprofit is running a program where feral cats are brought in, spayed or neutered, and then released back to the streets. In March, they expanded the practice under what they call a community cat program, where even friendly cats will be released.
There has been a lot of frustration on the part of small nonprofits and individual animal rescuers who are seeing this trend towards abandoning friendly domesticated cats on the streets.
This doesn't sit right with Brian Pease, an animal rights activist and attorney. He's filed a legal complaint against the Humane Society to force them to stop. He and his clients have no problem with managing populations of feral cats by trapping and bringing them to a clinic or to the Humane Society to be spayed or neutered, and then returning them to their habitat.
But then when you look at what's actually happening, when you have cats that they know were previously owned and were abandoned by the owners, or cats that are in dangerous areas, or cats that are injured, and just certainly should not just be put back out on the street.
In the city of San Diego, between July 2019 and December 2020, the Humane Society released more than 1,300 cats to the streets. That's almost double the number from the first 16 months of the program. Gary Weitzman, CEO of the San Diego Humane Society, says it's more humane to release cats rather than keeping them in a shelter.
Those cats are held here for medical exams. They're in holding cages. They're, no matter how easy we make the environment for them, they are stressed to the max. Now consider, those same cats did really well outdoors, being cared for by the community, enjoying the environment, not in danger. Those cats did really well. Why don't we just spay and neuter them, prevent them from getting rabies and distemper, and have them go back and enjoy their lives?
He added that any cats with a sign of ownership, including a collar or microchip, would not be released. But it's not always easy to tell whether a cat has been previously owned or not. So says Pam Harris, a longtime animal shelter volunteer who's working with Peace on the legal complaint.
They say that any cat with signs of ownership will not be put into the community cat program. So, for example, if a cat comes in microchipped or wearing a harness, that cat won't be put back. However, most people who have indoor cats don't put collars on them. Probably most of the cats who are pets are not microchipped.
The safety of the cats is one concern. The other is the impact they have on the overall ecosystem, specifically bird populations. Jim Pugh, conservation director of the San Diego Audubon Society, describes the cats as an invasive species.
There are huge environmental impacts. We know that each of those cats takes several birds a month.
Pugh says his ideal solution to the stray cat issue would be to create giant warehouses where cats could live.
We see, these daycare centers for pets, where they have indoor facilities and they have toys and exercise for them and stuff. If they're going to keep animals, they ought to be kept indoors.
Claire Tregesser, KPBS News.
I'm Amna Nawaz. Tonight on the NewsHour, the war between Israeli forces and Hamas in Gaza continues as calls for a ceasefire grow. It's coming up at 7 right after Evening Edition on KPBS.
And here's another look at today's top stories. A first step toward getting cruise ships sailing again. The Port of San Diego partnered with Sharp Healthcare to vaccinate over 400 crew members from 1 Princess Cruises and 2 Holland America Line ships. The cruise industry normally generates almost $300 million in economic impact and creates thousands of jobs. Activists calling for San Diego Mayor Todd Gloria to cut the city's police budget and invest more in social services were disappointed this week. Gloria released his final budget proposal Tuesday with no significant changes to police spending. Last month, he proposed $19 million in additional funding, mostly to cover rising pension costs. The city council will discuss the latest spending plan tomorrow. And the median price of a single-family home in San Diego County rose to $825,000 in April. That's $150,000 more than the same time last year. The California Association of Realtors says there's very little inventory, leading to multiple offers and then bidding wars. Realtors expect home prices to continue to increase as long as the federal government keeps interest rates low. And you can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org. Thanks for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Have a great evening.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, proud to support the mission of KPBS and privileged to serve San Diego clients. Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, helping homeowners maintain drain, heating, and cooling systems since 1978. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley. And by the following: and by viewers like you. Thank you.